earth 3 generations of men, the first of them being men of gold. Becoming too close to gods themselves, Cronus ended their time on earth with an eternal sleep. The second generation came to be the men of silver. Unwilling to serve the Titans and make sacrifices upon the holy altars, as all men shall do, they were condemned to dwell under the earth for all eternity. Finally, a third generation, the men of bronze, a brazen race sprung from the ash tree. Terrible and strong are they. Join me as I tell you the tales of the men of bronze. This is Dragon's Blood. Beware Brontes. Episode 29. The journey back to the compound was uneventful for the party. Just as Mutal said, there were men and fresh horses waiting to meet them at the halfway point. It did take some time to find the men. They explained that, while they supped, a fresh battalion of Brontes mercenaries were marching west, and they had to flee into the forest. Sunnisret's eyesight came back quickly after they left the desolation of the salt plain. Shortly before the party found the men, Gamden regained consciousness. He told them all he had seen, heard, and smelled. The skin and bones man woke up a few times and could only ask for water before he fell asleep again. Benkari woke with a start and immediately wanted to know everything that happened. Akum informed him of the events after he cast the spell, then Gamden repeated his tale. The woman remained asleep the entire trip. Mutal was waiting out front of his main house. Once the wagon stopped, he said, "There is a physician waiting inside, and my personal servants will wait on the woman night and day." Sunnisret, Gamden, Akum, and Mutalu carried the woman inside, still wrapped in the contraption. Benkari called for a young man passing by to help him from the wagon. Once on the ground, he waddled as fast as he could after them, shouting, "Wait for me! Wait for me! Your physician probably doesn't know a healing plant from a garden weed." In the common room, a large wooden table was placed by the hearth, where a fire was burning brightly. Once the woman was placed gently down, Benkari burst into the room and said, "Everyone out. Everyone out. Only the physician, me, and 2 aides will remain." 3 young serving girls ushered the bystanders out of the room. Sunnisret frowned while he complained, "I want to see what she looks like. Come on, I want to see." "Ah, yes. Come along, everyone," said Mutal. "Especially you, son. Let's go to the cookhouse, and you can tell me everything that happened." "Oh, Papa, it was frightening, but I wouldn't want to have missed the adventure with my friends." As they left the room, Benkari could be heard arguing with the physician. Mutalo was retelling his tale to his father in the cookhouse when the physician walked in and sat down heavily with a sigh. A short man, dressed in a red toga that signified his profession. His face wrinkled, dark eyes, and hawk nose. He said to everyone, "It's just so frustrating." Akum responded with a consoling tone in his voice. "I know that Makari can be..." He paused for a moment to find the right words. "Difficult at times." No, responded the physician. "I mean, yes, he can be very difficult." He sat back and crossed his arms. "I mean, it's frustrating because I am so far behind in the healing arts." He sighed again. "Benkari has taught me more this afternoon than I've learned in my entire life." "Minkari has lived a long life," responded Ackham, "and his entire life has been in the pursuit of knowledge." "And he never forgets anything," interjected Gamden. Ackham nodded in agreement. "Well, whatever the case may be," said the physician as he rubbed his eyes wearily, "it's a good thing he is here now. The woman you brought here has a high fever, and her left hand has been removed, plus a couple bad bruises. Luckily, no broken bones." "What do you mean, her hand has been removed?" asked Senusret. "It was a clean cut. Then the wound was cauterized. She was also drugged. Minkari believes that the drug has run its course. Now we are working on getting the fever down. So far, our apothecary has had all the healing plants that he needs." Senusret jerked his thumb in Ackham's direction and said, "Why don't you use a healing spell or something?" Considering his answer for a moment, Ackham then answered, "I can heal broken bones, cuts, and bruises, but my magic can't help her with her fever. Even magic has its limits." Senusret shook his head and mumbled, "That's not good." Gamden looked sideways at him and asked, "Why has this woman become so important to you, Senusret?" "She is tall like me, and has the same color skin as me." Senusret looked at them in turn, then continued, "I have never seen another person in the Three Kingdoms that looks like me. Maybe she came from the same part of the world as me. Maybe she can tell me about my family, my past, and why my father and me fled my homeland." Everyone sat in silence for a few moments, thinking about Senusret's conundrum. Finally, the physician broke the silence and said, "I have to get back to the patient. And Minkari," he added with another sigh. "He originally sent me to the apothecary. Wouldn't trust anyone else to get the correct ingredients. I will come back and let you know how she is progressing." He went to get up, then sat back down again, then said, "Gamden, Skin and Bones man is recovering and has asked about you. He wants to see you, but Minkari won't let anyone else in or out during the recovery." He smiled slightly, got up, and left the cookhouse. Minkari kept a vigil throughout that night, closing his eyes only a few minutes at a time. The healing plants that he had ordered the physician to retrieve started to work. The woman's fever began to break that night, but she did not wake. Skin and Bones man woke during the night and wanted to eat and drink everything in sight. Minkari wagged his finger in Skin and Bones man's face and told him, "You've been starved for several weeks, at least. At least. If you eat and drink all you want, you'll just vomit it all up. I've told the serving women to keep you on a strict diet until tomorrow night at least. Then we can see about increasing your food intake." Throughout that night, the woman had troubled dreams. In her fevered sleep, she spoke in a foreign tongue. Minkari, at her side, listened intently. In his mind, back in his library, he cross-referenced parchment, scroll, tome, and in conjunction with his divination, he deciphered her language. While she slept, serving women bathed her, and then Minkari and the physician tended to her wound on her left arm. The physician noted out loud, "The wound was cauterized, and the cut was clean at least." Nodding his head in agreement, Minkari added, wanted to keep her alive. The men of silver are cannibals. Cannibals, I tell you. Keep her drugged, cut one part of her body off, then come back to harvest other body parts. He shivered at the thought. They tended to the rest of her cuts and bruises. Minkari then ordered food to be brought to her bedside for when the woman woke up. Shortly after sunrise, she did wake up, but in a stupor. With aid from the physician and one of the serving women, she sat up and ate like a lioness that had been caged and starved. In her native language, she spoke in disjointed sentences. Not aware yet that her left hand was gone, she reached for a goblet, but pushed it off the table with the stub of her arm. A look of horror came across her face as she stared at the stub. Falling backwards, unconsciousness took her again. The next morning, Skin and Bones Man woke up hungry and ate his fill, then told his tale to Minkari. "My name is Ahiram," he began. "My father has an estate outside of Nebeta. The finest summer grapes come from his vines. Last fall he took ill and was near death. He wiped away the last of the breakfast with the back of his hand, then finished his water. With the aid of Minkari's healing, his flesh was supple again, his brown eyes sparkled with life, and vigor was in his limbs." Ahiram continued, "My younger brother hired 2 thugs to kidnap me and sell me into slavery. Greed drove him to it. He wants all that is mine by birthright." Slamming his fist on the table, he swore an oath. "I will sacrifice 7 goats unto Zeus, if he finds it in his divine wisdom to grant me my revenge for this injustice." Regaining his composure, Ahiram went on. "Eventually, I found myself toiling at Azurta for that brute, Brontes." Minkari, who had been lying back on a klenai, listening to every word, opened his eyes and sat up with a start. "Azurta!" he ejaculated. "Azurta is our destination. How did you escape? How did you end up at the lair of the men of silver? Tell me everything, man. Tell me everything." Minkari summoned a serving woman and asked that wine and more food be brought to them. Ahiram began his tale anew, talking late into the evening, eating all the food brought to him. The physician and Minkari checked upon the woman one last time. Her fever was gone, and she slept peacefully until the next morning. When morning came and the serving women were busy kindling a new fire in the hearth, a young girl in green toga with long black hair ran into the common room, saw the woman lying asleep. The girl took a stool, brought it to the table to stand on, so she could look at the woman. The girl was a doll next to the woman. Caressing her cheek, the girl whispered, "So pretty." The woman opened her large dark eyes and smiled. The girl smiled back. With one fluid motion, the woman sat up and scooped the girl into her arms and hugged her gingerly as tears of joy ran down her cheeks. Finished with the fire, the serving woman turned, saw her daughter in the woman's arms, and choked back a scream. At the same time, Minkari waddled into the room, wiping his face and neck with a wet cloth. Stopping in his tracks, he took in the scene, put a smile on his face. He spoke to the woman in her own tongue. I see that you are awake. Isn't that a beautiful way to wake up? To a child's smiling face. The woman put the child down, wiped the tears from her cheeks, slowly stood up. The girl gasped at the height of the woman and repeated, "So pretty." With her head in the rafters, the woman haltingly walked across the room, making note of everything and everyone in the room. She knelt down before Minkari, looked into his big brown eyes and asked, "You speak my language?" Looking him up and down, she added, "How can you speak my language? Everyone in the room is different from me and speaks a foreign tongue." Staring intently into the woman's dark eyes, Minkari inquired, "Are you hungry?" The woman paused for a moment as she took in the question. "I am hungry. Very hungry." Minkari touched her forehead and commented, "Your fever has broken and you are hungry. Excellent. Excellent." Minkari ordered that food and water be brought. The little girl stood beside Minkari, pointed at the woman, and said in her native tongue, "She's so pretty." "What did she say?" the woman asked. Minkari answered, "She said that you are pretty. I think you have a new best friend." Picking up the girl, she stood and followed Minkari to the table that had been set for them. Taking a chair, the girl sat upon the woman's lap. Sitting beside them, Minkari said with a gesture of his hand, "Let's eat while we talk. My name is Minkari, and you are..." A plate was prepared for the woman and placed before her. She picked up a grape, looked at it, then popped it in her mouth. Biting into it, her face lit up with delight. Giving one to the girl, she answered, "My name is Morowa." Look for episode 30 of Dragon's Blood, Beware Brontes, on YouTube.